Welcome to my second installment on the Magical Mystery Tour video compilation. Now, the first video I did was at Westmoreland Airfield. A little link up here. So what was tradition in the late 60s was that they would arrange what would they call them, pop package tours. And these were coach trips, primarily bands, and they would take passengers on trips, I guess relating to the bands that were conducting the tours, but also a mystery trip. So Paul had this idea that he was going to create a video documentary of such a trip, and he wanted the tour to start here at Allsops Place because it's the back of the coach station. There's quite a few nifty photos of Paul sitting against railings with Ivor Cutler. It could have been these railings, it could have been the railings down there. I'll post a picture for you. So Paul had this idea that the coach should start here and they would leave at 10:45 on the Sunday morning, and it would be himself and 40 other coach members, and each of them were given what's documented as a crisp £5 note for the duration of the journey. And in today's money, a £5 note is £155. But I think beer was only 9p a pint in those days. So the coach party depart here, and they stop at Virginia Water to pick up John, George and Ringo en route. And that's the official start of the journey, but it's not the official start of the film, because the film actually is a random sequence of documented film snippets. And I think it was all, there was some, watch out, bus coming. There was some script because John was narrating at the beginning of the film, but then actually towards the end of the film it just became a whole mishmash of all sorts of, nonsense.
I can't go any quicker. Stop it.
Come on.
Richard B. Starkey and his Aunt Jessica are always arguing about one thing or another.
Oh, I'm going.
Oh, go. Go
And
on.
what with today being Sunday and the weather looking up, you'd think they'd have given it a rest.
So what I'm going to do for this video is, my intention is to follow the route of the Magical Mystery Tour coach. Now, I do know that the movie was filmed over a period of 2 weeks, and the second week was primarily Westmoreland, which I did in the other video. But the first week was the actual journey of the coach going down to Cornwall via Basingstoke, Torquay and Bodmin. So we've got quite a few locations to cover on this video, and I'm not going to give you driving footage. It's just going to be, sort of the screen will cross, we'll be at the next location. So we start here in Allsops Place. The bus picked up the passengers and off they went. And then the journey, or the movie of the journey, is actually Ringo and Aunt Jessie getting on the coach. So we'll go there first and then we'll commence the journey. So the story starts here, Theatre Street in Clapham, with Lavendar Hill at the top. One fine Sunday morning, Richard B. Starkey and his Aunt Jessie, who he's dragging up the road, are heading for the coach, which is waiting for them at the top of Lavendar Hill. We've got this lamppost, no, it's a telegraph pole, and the last house in this sequence of terraced houses has got the gable end. If I overlay this picture here, you can see that the exact location is filmed coming up this street. And she does stop to take a rest, they have a little argument, she's sitting on the wall, which is a little further up here. And then they turn the corner and there's a bus waiting for them. But I'll take you up there. Let's go and have a look and see if I can get the actual location where they jump on board the coach. Let's go and see. So in the next scene, you see both Aunt Jessie and Richard B. Starkey walking out onto Lavendar Hill. Right here, the bus was parked, and it's very convenient because it is a bus stop just outside Lavendar Spa, health and beauty. And the reason I've identified this location precisely, and I say precisely, the row of terraced houses at the back, if you count the chimneys just along the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with the end gable, and also the building on the left of these, you've got a series of 3 windows, and then a wreath-shaped motif, and then another 3 windows. So actually, this is the precise spot. I wonder if I can actually superimpose a bus from the picture, where we have Jolly Jimmy Johnson and Wendy Winters saluting and waiting for them. Wow, the Magical Mystery Tour began here with Richard B. Starkey walking up the lane with Aunt Jessie. Now, one of the peculiarities of cinematography is that you see Ringo and Aunt Jessie being beckoned onto the coach, and Jimmy Johnson, I think it's Jimmy Johnson, you know, he's kind of wringing his hands and, right, let's get on with the journey. And they climb on the coach just there, and then the next scene you see, you know, he takes the microphone and he's like, welcome aboard this magical mystery tour. But that's actually filmed in Bodmin. So they do a splice and a cut of Ringo and the gang, you know, getting on the coach, and then the next thing you know, they're in Bodmin. But that's going to come further in the video. So I think what I'll do is jump in the car and go to the next location. And behind me is Virginia Water. Now, the coach trip began in Allsops Place, and it was scheduled to leave at 10:45, but the livery and the lettering on the coach had not actually been completed, so there was a delay. So Paul had gone up into the restaurant above Baker Street Tube Station with Mal Evans, Neil Aspinall and the gang, and they were having a cup of tea, and as part of the course he ended up signing lots of autographs. There's a couple of pictures here. And during this 2-hour stint, Paul and Mal Evans went into Soho and bought the outfits for Jolly Johnson and Wendy Winters. So 2 hours later, the coach leaves Allsops Place and has to pick up George, John and Ringo. I have to get their names in my head. And it comes down here to Virginia Water. Now, the other side of Virginia Water, just probably about 20 minutes drive, is St. George's Hill, where George, John and Ringo had their homes. Anyway, enough waffling. Virginia Water, where they picked up George, John and Ringo, and then trekked on. Well, I might actually be taking the weather with me now. This is the A30, and before the M3 was constructed, weary travellers travelling from London to the southwest, Cornwall, would use the A30. Now, exactly here, where we have home base, used to stand the Pied Piper Diner. It was one of those roadside motel diner restaurants, those kind of things. And the Beatles made their first stop on the Magical Mystery Tour bus. Obviously not home bargains, but they stopped here at the Pied Piper Diner. And it was reported that this was the only time that the Beatles ever paid a visit to Basingstoke. I do believe that the service station on the other side is called Pied Piper Services. Now, I know this is the right location because across the road there is the Stag and Hounds Harvester. So the harvester at the back there, the Stag and Hounds, there's this one picture of the lads in the bus, and you can see the sort of pointy gable end of the pub in the background on the picture. Filming had begun on the coach journey from Virginia Water, so they'd already started making some scenes, but the crew and everyone stopped here for lunch. Gosh, it's now a home base. Nothing stays the same, does it? You never get things staying the same. I suppose for posterity, you're not going to get a blue plaque up here. The Beatles once had lunch here. Yeah, they all went to home base. Okay, onwards and upwards. Let's see where we can go next. After 4 days of filming from London down to Newquay, doing their bits and bobs on the beach. The gang jump back on the bus and head back to London. And they stop at Smedley's fish and chip bar. Can you imagine the craziness? This little housing estate, a magical mystery bus turning up and 43 people piling out to try and get in here. There's some excellent photographic evidence of them all trying to queue up and get their fish and chips. But the connection is that the Smedley's fish and chip bar was run by James and Amy Smedley, and their niece was responsible for recruiting extras for the film. So of course fish and chips was on the agenda. I can imagine the phone call. Hello, auntie, uncle, we're just popping by. That's going to be 43 cod and chips. Oh, you don't like cod and chips? Oh, hang on. Okay, so 2 haddock and chips, 3 plaice and chips, and lashings of salt and vinegar. But you know, fish and chips factors a lot in the Beatles diet, and I wonder if, you know, coming from the north, Liverpool, fishing town, it was a staple diet anyway, and it probably still is the de facto go-to takeaway meal for us Brits. I've had to put my hat on, it's getting a bit blustery. So, the end of day 1, they've left Allsops Place by about, I don't know, 12:30, 1:45. They've stopped at Virginia Water to pick up 3 of the Beatles. They have then travelled via Basingstoke to the Pied Piper for lunch. Now you have to remember that in the late 60s there was no adjoining motorways, so we didn't have the M4, we didn't have the M3, and they would have travelled down the old A30 all the way down to Teignmouth. They actually arrived here, the Royal Court Hotel, at 9 p.m. at night, and there was something like 400 fans waiting, so word had got out that the Beatles were coming. But actually the lads had got out of the coach some miles up the road into their own cars, or at least a car that was following, perhaps a crew car, and had gone into the back of the hotel. So they spent the night here at the Royal Court Hotel, probably had fish and chips, signing autographs. I suspect that it was here that they found out that Widecome on the Moor had the September fete going on. Because you have to remember that the plot line was non-existent. They didn't have any plan. All they were going to do was take the journey down to the southwest and film whatever was going on. And I think perhaps someone mentioned, why don't you go to Widecome on the Moor? Because they're doing a summer fete, end of summer fete, and you could do some filming there. We all know what happened when they went to Widecome on the Moor, because they didn't get there. And actually that's the next place on the agenda. So, leave you with the Royal Court Hotel and some overlaid images of the Beatles crashing, and we'll go to Widecome on the Moor. What has to be, for me, one of the most iconic photographs for the whole Magical Mystery Tour is the bus being stuck on this bridge. And I can tell you, it's pretty narrow. I went over it just now. And there's a car coming over it just as we talk. And he's taking his time. Now, they had left the Royal Hotel. They were heading for Widecome in the Moor to take part in the fete, or do some filming there at the fete. That was the plan. And Alf, the bus driver, had decided he would take a shortcut to Widecome, having heard that there was a lot of traffic because of the fete, etc. And so he drove up this country lane, and he couldn't get the 6-wheeled bus across the bridge. I'm having to tread carefully here. So what, if I overlay the image here, will I get it on there? Something like that. I think I'll have to adjust that up a little. There we go. Adjust it up. I can put the bus on there, can't I? Just sitting on here somewhere. Oh boy. There's also another shot of the bus from that angle going across. Now, because the bus couldn't get across, they had to reverse. There's no turning points here. You had to reverse for 2 miles all the way down the lane. And this is where tempers started fraying. They did film. The footage was recorded of them, you know, arguments, etc., on the coach, but it was never used. Lennon was purported to have come out and he was ripping off signage off the bus and everything. And there's a wonderful quote by Ernest Hemingway. It goes, "Never travel with anyone you don't love." They had just spent a whole day coming from London down to the Royal Hotel in Teignmouth, and this was day 2, and they were just getting stuck here. What are they going to do? They gave up. They decided not to film at Widecome in the Moor, and they headed down to Plymouth, where there is some iconic bum sculptures, for want of a better word. Let's go see if we can find it. Well, you'll have to excuse me if I start feeling a little blurry in the voice and tired. I've been on the road since 7 this morning, trying to get all these locations in for you. And I feel a little like I've been on the bus, on the Magical Mystery Tour bus. So anyway, Plymouth Hoe, have a look. It's quite magical, actually. The Grand Hotel. And what happened was the Beatles tried to get to Widecome on the Moor, and because the bus failed, they actually had to turn around and come a different route. So they were going to go over the Teignmouth Bridge and head into Cornwall that way, but they decided to come to the Grand Hotel and they had lunch there. But they also took a series of iconic photographs. They obviously signed autographs and the like for the people. Can you see that? It says, "This artwork marks the spot where John, Paul, George and Ringo posed for a picture that has gone on to become one of the most famous images of one of the world's most influential bands." So there you go, taken on Tuesday 2nd September by music photographer David Redfern. It shows the Fab Four with an all-white Smeaton's Tower in the background. It's not all white now, it's got some red in it. They were in the city to pose for photographers while making the Magical Mystery Tour film. But if you have a look here, flower power, hand marks, bum marks. I was going to do a really nifty thing, but I didn't want to get my bum wet. Shall I do it? Shall I do it anyway? Superimpose. Let's have a look. So the question is, did it work? I had an idea in my head that I would be all 4 of the Beatles all at once. So let me just get a little recap here. Day 1 was London down to Teignmouth, the Royal Hotel. Day 2 was the bridge escapade, which failed, followed by lunch here, and then they carried on into Cornwall, stopping at Bodmin to do some more filming, and then down to the Atlantic Hotel, where they would stay for the remainder of their 4-day trip. It's been fun. Hope you're enjoying this. Right, let's go off to the next location. And I'm not going to click my fingers. So after having left Plymouth, they'd had the lunch at the Grand Hotel, they really had decided that they had to get to Newquay. So travelling up the A30, they came through Bodmin, and this is Highbore Road. And the coach actually stopped here, outside what was then the West End Dairy at 57 Highbore Road, run by Mr. Medland. Can you imagine the surprise the guy had with a coach of people? And he served them ice cream and pastries and lollies. They did actually film snippets of the lads and everybody in the shop, but it ended up on the cutting room floor. But the scene that I want to show you is just up here. So we'll go up. This is where Jolly Jimmy Johnson actually filmed the intro to the movie when he jumps on the coach. So let's head up there. I need to go over the road just now, but I want to give you the overlay because there is just a scene where Jolly Jimmy Johnson is in the coach, he's gone in, and he says to Alf, let's go, and he falls backwards. And in order to get the exact precise location, we've got, behind the traffic lights, we've got this little archway and a little shop window. And behind that, we've got the row of houses with 2 sets of chimneys. And if I overlay this image now of Jolly Jimmy lurching forward as the bus takes off, you'll actually see the house and the archway. It's astonishing, it's right there. Let's cross the traffic lights and we'll just stand at the exact location. So the coach was parked right here. We've seen the scene where Ringo and Jessie come up from Theatre Street, and the coach is ready to pick them up. And we've got Wendy Winters and Jimmy Jolly and Alf, you know, welcome aboard. And he rubs his hands like this and he jumps onto the coach, and it's filmed right outside here.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Magical Mystery Tour.
Because the next scene, it cuts and you see the inside of the coach, but actually you see this row of terraced houses. I'm just going to walk along here because you see this shop front window, and then you see this archway. So it's right at this location.
Here we are, Smedley. Very comfy in the neck there, isn't it?
So they actually had spent 2 days on the road already, leaving London and going down to Plymouth, before they actually filmed the scene where they're welcoming Ringo and Jessie onto the coach. Having left Bodmin, they head to the Atlantic Hotel at Newquay, and that's where we're going next. I'm going to put my sunnies on. It's beautifully sunny here in Cornwall. Look at this. Behind me, the Atlantic Hotel. So after 2 days of travelling, the Beatles arrive here with the entourage and the coach, and this is the exact location where they had the photograph. Wonderful. And they made a private executive decision to use the Atlantic Hotel as a base camp for their sojourn, for their adventures. And just over the little hill here, in front of the Atlantic Hotel, is Hoyer's Hut, where the lads did some filming. There's some photographs, I'll give you an overlay. There's actually a really decent video on YouTube, I'll put a link in the description below, called Remembering the Mystery Tour with Victor Spinetti, and it interviews all the characters that were involved in it. You get so much information from there. And it talks about 2 local boys that were watching the Beatles at Hoyer's Hut, poking their tongues, laughing at them, and then they went home to tell their mum, oh, we were, teasing the Beatles. People, meet my cohorts for the day. Where are you? Can you see her climbing? Ariel, Zara, my 2 mascots. How are you doing, girls? Are you bored? No? What are you doing sitting up there?
I just wanted.
Can you see some things? Do you know who was stood here? John, Paul, George and Ringo. Do you know who they are?
I have no.
Do you know who John, Paul, George and Ringo were?
No.
Have you heard of the Fab Four?
Nope.
No, they were 4 guys from Liverpool who in their teenage years picked up some guitars and drums, whoops, turning it round, picked up some guitars and drums and sang some songs and changed the world. Are you interested?
No.
She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Heard that song?
No, but I've heard the tune.
Have you heard of Yellow Submarine?
Yes.
We all live in the yellow. See? How old are you?
9.
9. She's 9 and she's heard of Yellow Submarine, and we're in 2022 already. So it's still spreading the word. Another iconic image is the bus parked in the car park. You can just see where the guys are working down there. This is Watergate Bay, and on one of the days of random filming, Paul had taken some of the people on the coach and they came down here to Watergate Bay, and on the beach they did some filming for Aunt Jessie and Ivor Cutler, you know, the sort of romantic scene, and there was quite a bit of footage that was deemed inappropriate by the BBC, so they didn't air it. But we've got images of, well, there's certainly the image of the bus parked here. But yeah, there's scenes of the lads with telescopes and, you know, just kind of beach apparel and that kind of stuff. I'll give you those images to look at. It's a balmy 10 degrees today for the end of February. So we've got the surfers out there. It's rather pleasant. So yeah, they came here for Watergate Bay. Watergate Bay. My son keeps telling me in the car. Dad, it's not Watergate Bay, it's Watergate Bay. Actually, across the headland there is Headlands Hotel and the Atlantic Hotel. Am I pointing in the right place? That's Newquay over there. So they had come from Newquay down here to Watergate Bay. I keep saying the wrong thing. Oh. Yeah, the Beatles were here. I've been doing some kind of looking at all the online newspaper, I suppose they're online newspapers, but reports and stories of how the Beatles did their 3 days in Cornwall and the effect that it had. It's really quite, it's like they own the Beatles. You know, the Beatles are ours. They came to Cornwall. We own them. But the reality is, as I said earlier, the Beatles touched millions and millions of people. Anyway, I will leave a link below to all the newspaper articles that I've come across while doing the research here, so you can have a quick read yourselves. Well, like the Beatles, I've now been down in Cornwall 3 days, and I think it's drawing to an end. I might have filmed a few things out of sequence, so forgive me if I change my clothes. But you can't stay in the same clothes all the time, right? So there, the Tywarnhayle Inn. Now the Beatles had been down 2 or 3 days, and Spencer Davis invited the lads down here for a drink because he was on holiday too. There are some pictures of Spencer Davis with his family, you know, taking part in the filming. You never see him in the film. Anyway, probably the second night, third night, Ringo, Paul, Neil Aspinall, Mal Evans and Miranda Ward, who was covering the whole event by the BBC, turn up here. And the story goes that the innkeeper or the barman said that Paul just kind of strolled in, evening all, maybe not in a London accent, but you know what I mean, propped himself up on a piano and started playing old pub tunes for the rest of the night. Miranda Ward had been quoted as saying he would not play Yellow Submarine despite how many times we asked him. And I think it went down into a lockdown, so you know, last orders were called and by 2 o'clock in the morning it finally finished. So yeah, the Tywarnhayle Inn in Cornwall. I kind of wonder, this is Perranporth by the way, I kind of wonder if there's any memorabilia in there, but I doubt it. It's probably changed hands many times. So I did film the fish and chip shop in Taunton, perhaps out of sequence, and I did an ending, but I'm going to do a different ending. I'm going to do it here. Hopefully you enjoyed this Beatles trip down Magical Mystery Tour memory lane. If you liked the video, please give it a like. Perhaps even consider subscribing for more future content, as they all say in videos. Or not, as the case may be. Just watch it. That's great. It's been fun. I've really enjoyed doing it. So, bye for now. See you in another video.